Where is the EU's regulation most significant? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Supplementary.
Well, I mean, many areas, anywhere in particular that affects, as I was saying at the start of this meeting, kind of the functioning of the single market and the customs union. There's kind of, it's blanket, large degree of regulation which has to be conformed with. If we're kind of looking at where the UK, might make its own policy, I think kind of naturally the areas that are easiest to develop UK-specific regulation are those where the EU regulation is least. That's kind of just intuitive, because there is less for business to move away from, less that it's accustomed to, and you have potentially, and there's less risk of international companies having to, not wanting to move on to the British system because they're already accustomed to the EU system. So the greatest opportunities for reform lie where EU regulation is most kind of minimal at the moment. Where might that be? I think some of the most interesting areas are to do with AI and cryptocurrency and these kind of areas, because again the EU has not really, it's planning now a regulatory framework, as we are as well, on AI, and specifically I'm talking here. And the UK has an opportunity to impose regulations before the EU. It's a single country rather than 27 member bloc. That gives a certain degree of flexibility to move more quickly. And also specifically, I would add, this is potentially somewhere where I was talking before about the EU as a regulatory hegemon, and generally businesses comply with EU regulation first because it's a bigger market for them. But in terms of AI in particular, there is a need to develop AI goods kind of before they go finally onto market. You need to be kind of testing and refining them. And the way the EU is approaching AI regulation is very much a comprehensive framework where they want to set definitions about exactly what constitutes certain types of technology and what constitutes a risk, whereas the UK approach is more flexible. It's meant to be growing more organically with more autonomy for sectoral specific regulators, and therefore it's more easily updated as technology evolves. And so the UK might make itself a more attractive environment for AI software development because you have that slightly more flexible regime. I think at the end of the day, big AI companies are still going to want to sell into the EU single market. That is ultimately, it's a much bigger global market for finished goods. But as you move towards that, the UK can be the slightly lighter touch regulator on the border, I think, potentially, which has similar regulations to the EU but not the same. And there you have an element of potential symbiosis, which comes from the fact that kind of, they have separate but complementary regulatory systems which are being developed as we speak. It's much harder to do that where the EU systems are already in place and already fully adhered to by international companies.
Thank you. Mr. Reynolds, coming back.